Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh. So today we have Dr. Samira Hassan. Welcome, Doctor.
Thank you. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Great.
Thank you for
So,
having me.
so really, we're just going to ask you all about COVID and everything to do with that. To our group of parents, we are concerned, worried, anxious about the whole thing. But I guess just before we go into that, I guess for the benefit of our audience, I just want to ask how you became a doctor, and you do a lot of stuff outside just medicine as well. So if you can give us a quick background of that.
Well, a quick summary of the last 20 years. Okay, that's so how I became a doctor. I guess it depends on what angle you want me to answer that from.
Oh,
It's something I've always wanted to do, as you
yeah,
can imagine. I'm sure every
yeah,
medical student says the same thing.
yeah.
And this is the dreams I came with into the UK after growing up in the Middle East.
Okay.
And alhamdulillah, I worked towards it,
Yeah,
applied to medical school.
yeah.
Then just as I applied and was offered a place, I had a bit of a wobble. I went through a whole life-changing moment, and I
Okay.
decided medicine wasn't for me. And
Okay, so you nearly didn't do medicine.
I nearly never did medicine because I
Okay.
declined the offer that was given to me, which is very rare
Okay.
anyway.
Okay.
And then I embarked on a journey where I had to discover my new purpose and what I was really interested in. I did every work experience under the sun. I spoke to so many people. I would stalk prayer rooms in the universities to try and find out from other people and other students what they were doing and why they were interested. It's
Okay.
almost like I had to redefine who I was.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah, that journey, however, brought me right back full circle to medicine. And I realized it was actually more than just a career for me. It's a vocation, it's a passion. And I think
Yeah.
it's only grown from there ever since. So Alhamdulillah, I reapplied, had
Yeah.
several rejections, reapplied,
Oh,
finally managed to get into medical school in London,
yeah.
but I completed my training in Cardiff University,
Okay.
moved to Leicester, junior doctor, and never looked back since.
So
Alhamdulillah.
great. Well, that kind of explains all the stuff because you did the Somali careers fair in the UK at least.
Yeah.
So that is that a spin-off project while you was discovering who you are and what you wanted to do?
It's actually a huge part of it. So
Okay.
one of the main reasons, and a lot of people often ask me that. To me, it was almost something that I felt was a not a novel concept, but a given.
Hmm.
It wasn't an intentional creation. It's not like a brainchild of mine. I haven't
Okay.
found the jobs fairs. It's just that I realized throughout my time of confusion, to say the least, when I was
Yeah.
16, 17, 18. And I was
Yeah.
somebody who was always striving to be the top of my class academically.
Mm.
So I thought to myself, if I was struggling to figure out my path in life, and I
Yeah.
was somebody who was getting the high grades and everything else, then can you imagine for somebody who doesn't really know what they want to do in life and therefore find
Yeah.
that working towards some, you always need a goal and a purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. You need a sense of
Being a young
direction.
child to slog away, slave away, to spend countless nights staying awake, doing countless revision notes, reading all kinds of boring looking textbooks.
Yeah.
They cannot see the vision and the aim and the goal behind it is actually, to me, the most ridiculous thing somebody can ask a young person.
Yeah.
Because for us, I guess when you look at it from a parental perspective or an adult's perspective, it's very
Yeah.
obvious that you have to study, you have to work university, you got to collect degrees to fill up the
Yeah.
credits, you got to collect all these
Collect
accolades.
all the points and yeah, whatever.
For you, the point is obvious, the
Yeah.
end goal is obvious because
Yeah.
you've had the privilege of a life experience to figure out why it's needed.
Yeah.
And we project that same vision onto the children without really explaining it to them. So the
Mm.
reason I decided to do the careers fairs was initially when I first came to the UK, I come from a background or a family where education is very much promoted, encouraged. My dad spent a lot of time educating us, a lot of money educating us. We went through private schools. So I've always known the value of education. And he would tell us from a very young age, why is it that we needed to work hard? Because I didn't enjoy studying for the sake of studying.
Mm.
The popular belief, I'm not a book nerd. I don't enjoy studying for the sake of studying. I enjoy
Okay.
learning, but I don't enjoy the classroom setup of studying for exams. I never have,
Yeah.
never will.
Yeah. Okay.
So I needed somebody to tell me from a very young age why I'm working towards, why I'm sacrificing my time with friends, why I'm sacrificing
Yeah.
watching my favorite TV shows, why I'm sacrificing.
Yeah. 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 All the
And
things you
because I
missed.
was
Yeah.
able to understand it early on,
Mm.
I was able to work towards that even on the most challenging of days and on the days where I felt that I couldn't push on anymore. I remembered why I was doing it. I'll be honest with you, primarily as a child, my main reason was not to disappoint my dad. That was my only goal in life.
That's
But as you
as
grow up,
Somalis we project that very quite heavily on that. Yeah.
I don't think my dad meant to, but because I was able to see his quiet labor and the fact that he managed to make
Yeah.
something of himself from his very humble beginnings, The fact that he actually spends all this time and energy and money. And I was one of those 10-year-olds that would calculate how much it costs to live in this house. And for me, it was monumental that my dad would spend that much money on us. So I decided I had to make sure that it was something that
worth
was
it.
and worth it.
Yeah.
Which is why I decided to do medicine and work hard in school. But then I came to the UK and I realized the mindset of children, well, not all of them, of course, but a lot of the children I came across was completely different. And even people who are in my age group were not even remotely interested. Not a lot of the ones I was mixing with were not remotely interested in bettering their career prospects. Of course, they had other interests in life, which is perfectly valid, but they weren't, and I couldn't understand it. And I thought, the land of educational opportunity.
It's right here. What's going on? Yeah.
Wow, you're in the UK and the US. And you don't realize the mentality people have abroad of the opportunities we have here.
Yeah.
From both sides, because I've always aspired to come out of a prestigious university in the UK.
Yeah, sure.
And so for me, it was a dream and it was a no-brainer. I had to go to uni. I just had to figure out what it was. Obviously, for me, it was medicine all along. Then I had the wobble, went back to medicine. And so when I saw that, I realized the reason kids don't really strive towards academic excellence, at least, is because they probably don't realize the point of it. And what better way than to show by example? And obviously the Somali community is dear to my heart. I would love to see Black excellence, Islamic excellence, and humanity excelling in all its forms, regardless. The Somali community is closer to my heart, and I try to showcase to them that somebody who looks like them, sounds like them, grew up in the same estate as them, can make it and make it big. So what's and it was, I think that's a powerful reminder.
Absolutely.
And that's how the Careers Fair was born. It was an idea I sat on for 6 years before I decided to go ahead and do it.
And how many has happened? Do you know?
Well, multiple. I started off the Leicester Careers Fairs, and we've done it every year. So I've done it for 3 years since I started in 2017.
Yeah.
I was involved with the Birmingham Careers Fairs, which was a spin-off of that. I organized the London one with the London team. Cardiff Careers Fair. We had a Bristol Careers Fair. We had a Careers Fair in Melbourne, which I was to help take part in and obviously help to organize. The Somali Global Excellence Conference. There was also a Careers Fair in Minnesota that I was invited to, but I couldn't go. So there was so many different spin-offs from there. And I think one in Abu Dhabi or Dubai.
Wow.
About Alhamdulillah. And I had people reaching out to me from Hargeisa and Kenya to want to do the same thing. Because the concept, I think, is a global concept, isn't it?
It's a powerful idea. Absolutely. Yeah.
So Alhamdulillah, I'm really pleased that it took off the way it did. Not that I've ever imagined it would.
Fantastic. Very inspiring. And I wish we could talk about that more, but for today's topic at least. So you are a general practitioner, a GP. Tell us all about, let's just take it from the top. What is COVID? And and please explain it to us in the most simplest way you can, really, just from the top.
100%. So it's hard to summarize. 2020 feels like 10 years old. So COVID essentially is the disease caused by this virus called coronavirus. And it's a novel virus. So coronavirus as a family of viruses have always existed. But this is a particular new strain that didn't exist before, which is why it's particularly problematic. And when I say strain, I mean viruses go through genetic changes all the time. And that's their way of evolving to obviously exist and survive throughout time. And when they are constantly evolving, they develop new antigens, which is the protein markers on the top. And that gives them almost like a new identity when they're in a host body, which is our body, for example. So this novel virus and strain, and don't ask me how it happened, but it's one of the genetic mutations that's developed this new novel strain. And it broke out, obviously, as we all know, in a market in China. Well, that was the main source, as people claim. And it spread like wildfire because our immune system hasn't had a chance to develop an immune response to it, simply because it is a novel virus. And I think that's the key thing. It's not something your body's used to or has been exposed to in the past. And therefore, building up an immune response to anything takes time, which is why vaccinations work so well. It allows you to build that immunity well before the real virus attacks you. But you didn't have that chance with coronavirus. It's spread like wildfire. It's highly, highly pathogenic. And the fact that it's very virulent and spreads like wildfire is also what made it the global pandemic that it is. Much more than Ebola or even because of the level of spread that it can have. And that's what the initial problem was. But the problem was, as we are finding out with time, Again, as with any new condition or disease, you do not know the short-term effects or the long-term consequences until you've lived through it. And for us, I think time is the biggest research lesson. Time will tell the actual scale of impact and the long-term consequences for those who have been affected, not just through health, but also physically, mentally, financially. And I guess we will be able to look back on this time and actually analyze it for what it is. But at the moment we're living in it, it is a virus that has claimed many lives, as we all know. It mainly attacks the respiratory system, i.e. mainly the cells of the lung, the airways and the little air pockets, the alveoli. And because of that, the immune system recognizes it as a foreign body. It will mount an immune response, and it's the immune response that causes the condition COVID-19, the actual disease.
Okay.
The reason why people are struggling with coronavirus when it afflicts them, if they are unlucky to be the ones who it becomes a severe condition in, is because their lungs fill up with fluid. Their lungs fill up with fluid, their airways become inflamed, which means they become swollen. They find it difficult to not only take air in, but also you need a fluid-free area to be able to exchange oxygen so the blood can pick up the oxygen and circulate it around the body. But you cannot do that in an area that's supposed to be full of air, like a sponge, soaked full of fluid. And that fluid is the immune response. It's your immune system in its quest and its battle and
to win,
trying to beat that virus. So much damage, which is essentially why coronavirus is a huge problem. So people on the end of the spectrum where they're requiring oxygen and ventilation are basically under supportive care. There is no cure, there is no treatment that will cure it as such. All we're doing in hospitals and healthcare professionals is trying to support the body to breathe, to have the adequate levels of oxygen, to reduce inflammation while your own body is killing the virus. Your body is doing the job of trying to at least kill the virus. And that's why it's particularly problematic, because we really are relying on their immune system to kill the virus.
Okay. Goodness. So,
worried there.
Yeah, absolutely. So as parents, what can we do for ourselves and to protect our children? And because apparently there might be this second wave coming up, or it is already here. What would be your advice to parents?
I think that my advice to parents would be similar to the advice I give many. We have to understand we're living in a society where we're all relying on each other to stop the spread of this transmission.
Okay.
We're all relying on each other to take the necessary precautions to limit the spread and therefore limit the potential consequences. As parents, of course, it had been, particularly towards the time when schools were reopening, a major concern for a lot of parents. I had a lot of people contacting me, asking me about whether the fact that they were worried that the children would be super spreaders, which children usually are, bless them, unbeknownst to them. The problem, however, is that children will be children. They will mix, they will play, they will be children, not knowing the effects of this pandemic. And therefore, the potential is that they spread the viruses. Luckily, it's not been shown to cause major problems in children, maybe because of the fact that the immune systems are relatively fresh and young, and the fact that they can build an immune response pretty quickly means that they can contain the virus before it even develops any symptoms in them of any major concern. They might not even notice any symptoms, or they may be completely asymptomatic, which means they have no symptoms. But the problem is they can still carry the virus and pass it on to somebody else. So the difficulty for parents is, how do you manage your children going to school and getting an education and being normal children and playing and living a life, whilst trying to reduce the spread to yourself, your loved ones, their grandparents, your neighbors, your work colleagues, who could potentially fall victim to the severe end of the disease. And it's difficult to say who will, who won't, but of course, time and data, clinical data from hospital and science has shown that those who are most vulnerable tend to be the ones with the weakest immune systems, i.e. the elderly, those with pre-existing health conditions, because the immune system is already overwhelmed with those pre-existing health conditions, those who have certain medications that depress the immune system, like immunosuppressants and steroids. So it's the whole idea of reducing the spread of the virus is to protect the vulnerable few. Really, that's the main aim. You may end up being one of those vulnerable few. I think there's no easy way to say that you're definitely not going to get the severe end. Okay. So for parents, I would say, keep the necessary precautions, washing hands, maintaining distance, making sure that you are following government guidelines as much as possible, as well as trying to make sure that there's an environment that is not filled with fear and worry for your children. They need to be able to feel that they're part of a productive society where they can just be children and play. And I think that's all parents can do.
Cool. We've got a big question about taking vaccines, the winter flu vaccine. What's your advice on that?
I'm a big advocate of the winter flu vaccine.
Okay.
The reason I say that is because it has been proven and shown to reduce the disease burden in an individual and in society. It reduces the severity of the flu illness, and it also reduces the spread of the flu virus. Now, I think flu virus has been around for so long that people underestimate its actual effects. Because I've worked in hospitals ever since my junior doctor days, I have seen patients who have died of the flu. The flu, oftentimes, yes, in young, fit, healthy people, produces symptoms like fever, cough, general body aches, tiredness, and sometimes you'll be bedbound with it. But oftentimes, it doesn't cause you the major problems of severity in breathlessness. It doesn't cause pneumonia in you, and it can cause bronchitis and pneumonia in really young babies and children, and in the elderly, and those with already pre-existing conditions. It can be deadly. And every year we have a percentage of patients that will die of the flu illness, which is why the wintertime has always been a massive burden on the NHS, because we're trying to mitigate the flow of illnesses,
because of the flu,
worsening illnesses because of the flu. And you have this year coronavirus to add the cherry on top, which is a huge problem.
So we should give our kids the flu injection. That would be your advice?
So yes, so my advice would be to have the flu vaccine if you're in the at-risk group, and that would be elderly people, obviously people with previous health conditions and staff, but also young children, those in primary school in particular, year 7, and those between the age of 2 to 3. The reason mainly that those young children are being given really is to reduce the spread. If your child doesn't have the flu vaccine, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will have severe flu or have the major consequences that we are worried about that can happen in a few percent, a small cohort. However, the idea is to reduce,
because they're carrying it to somebody who could
potentially have a major problem with it. So the flu vaccine does not stop you from developing the flu. It protects you from ever getting the flu. What it does is it reduces the virus's ability to replicate and grow in your body. So if you are somebody who has a flu vaccination on board and you have a healthy immune system, you'll develop antibodies and an immune response to it. So not only will it kill off most of the virus before it has a chance to replicate, then you have less virus to spread, but also you'll have less virus to cause you illness. So in both ways, it's a good thing. But there is obviously a major controversy in some circles with regards to the flu vaccine for children, and also with vaccination in general. But it's understanding why you need to take it, and discussing the pros and cons is very important, because not everybody, it's not by law that you have to take it. It's not something that can be enforced upon you. It is encouraged because of its research. But it's not something that can be enforced upon you. And ultimately, as with everything in medicine and any treatment and any procedure, you have to weigh up the pros and the cons for you individually, and then make an informed decision. And even if it's a no, that's perfectly fine, as long as you're aware.
Brilliant. Can I ask you, I know you said you were unsure where the coronavirus came from. There's like 100 conspiracy theories about that. Is it beneficial to even like entertain those ideas? Or should we just treat that as...
I don't see the point at this point. I think we'll leave that to the World Health Organization and all these major international public health institutions. Sometimes we worry ourselves with things we have no control over. It is their job to trace the origins of this virus, how it came about, how the strain developed, to hopefully allow us to learn from this pandemic and be able to be better prepared for future pandemics, which surely will happen at some point in time.
Sure.
Right? So that will leave it to them. What can we do to protect ourselves, our families, our communities, our cities, our country, our society is the most important thing we need to focus on. So it matters very little whether it came from China, South America, South Africa, or Australia. And the point of the matter is it's causing a huge impact negatively most of the time across major parts of the world in every aspect.
Great. A lot of people are also advocating taking a load of vitamins and, habit soda and all this sort of stuff. Is that just generally good thing stuff that would just generally boost the immune system?
I'm a big believer in traditional medicine. I'm a big believer in the prophetic medicine and the prophetic sunnah. they do have their value. They do have their benefit. There's no doubt about it. And I think there's even been research in the scientific world that has shown the benefits of camel milk, for example, or black seed oil. They do exist. But to claim that they will cure you of coronavirus, highly dishonest and very dangerous, because nobody can prove that. At the end of the day, obviously, we're all Muslims. We do, some of it, we do believe in God and have our faith in God, that the ultimate cure is with him. And it may be that you feel better after taking, for example, black seed oil or happy soda. That's because the healing came from, I believe, from God, not necessarily because of this
particular thing. Okay.
Even though we were told in our scriptures and our religion, obviously contains huge benefits. So we take it with the aim of curing ourselves. You cannot expose yourself to coronavirus and think that that's okay because I have to stay home. You really are being dishonest with yourself. You're missing the prophetic sunnah and the traditional medicine and its concepts, and you're putting yourself and others at risk. And I think it's really important to know that.
Has there been any single one medicine or vitamin that has proved particularly potent against COVID, against the COVID, or is it just, we should be just generally trying to keep healthy?
In general, you should keep healthy, that's for sure. And vitamins and minerals is very important to make sure you're getting your daily recommended intake. Because yes, it does help every system in your body, including your immune system. Again, we're relying on our immune system to fight this virus. So why not arm it and make sure
but there's no direct
powers.
But so far,
but to say that it cures it, no. There's been a link between vitamin D and coronavirus. There's ongoing research. There have been a few papers where they've shown that patients who have vitamin deficiency compared to patients who are vitamin D complete have had differences in their health outcomes or respiratory health outcomes with regards to not just the coronavirus, but the flu. It's because we've always known for a long time that vitamin D plays a role in your immune system. And it can, lack of vitamin D, which is a very common thing, can dispose you to having more illnesses, more viral illnesses, particularly respiratory illnesses. So it does play a part in fighting respiratory infections. Plays a part and cures it are two different things, though.
Thank you, Doctor. That's really clear. Cool. So let's step back again, Dr. Samira. What's next for you? Like I said to you before we record, I'm a big fan of you. Jazakallah khair, and you do great things. I'm hearing you're starting a YouTube channel. What's the score?
Yes.
Here's the download.
On the grapevine is I've decided to step out of my shell. And start a YouTube channel. Yes. It's not something I ever envisaged. I would say, hey, welcome to my YouTube. I never thought that would be words that come out of my mouth. I've not been somebody who watches YouTube. I've not been a fan of YouTube. I've always assumed it to be a certain selection of the society that use YouTube. But clearly I was wrong, and my misconceptions have been laid to rest. So the reason I decided to start a YouTube channel is because throughout the pandemic, as we all have seen, multiple people in different communities, in the Black and ethnic minority communities in particular, in the UK at least, have had devastating losses, and the percentages of people who are dying from BAME backgrounds compared to the Caucasian backgrounds, there has been shown to be a stark difference in the numbers that cannot just be attributed to chance. And the part of the reason for that, there's many reasons, of course, and I'm not claiming one is more than the other, but part of the reason was probably the fact that a lot of the key health information, guidance, and instructions from health professionals and the government has taken its time to cascade down to individual members of certain societies who either don't watch the news, don't speak English, or don't understand, or have different health beliefs and different health literacy in general. So it's not just about the lack of English language speaking abilities, but it's also the cultural beliefs, your basic understanding of health beliefs, health literacy, and also your access to these kinds of information. So these people have missed out. And unfortunately, as we know, the sooner we take precautions, the sooner we can limit the spread of this virus. But if you don't know and you carry on, they say ignorance is bliss. It can continue. So we found that to be one of the major factors that probably could have contributed to it. And so what I have been doing throughout the pandemic is trying to spread that information and awareness in my very limited Somali to as many of the elderly population in the Somali community as I can. I have a very soft spot for our mothers and our fathers and elderly people. Always thought about how I could better improve their understanding of health and improve the health inequalities that exist currently, even within them, even within the Somali society. You've got the younger cohort who understand the workings of a healthcare system better, are better able to advocate for their needs and their symptoms, and are better able to access because they're aware of it, compared to the generation before that, who are probably not aware of the opportunities out there, but also struggle to be able to communicate and also struggle to be able to marry up their traditional health beliefs with the current Western model of medicine. So all of that, I think, has not only caused problems within this pandemic, but I think historically always caused problems with regards to health access. And I've always thought about
So you feel like you feel a bit obliged to...
More than obliged. I like my thing. I like to stay within my shell, but I realize I'm probably doing a disservice. And with all the different events and platforms that I've been invited to speak on to spread the information of coronavirus, in Somali in particular, I decided instead of repeating the same thing
100 times,
and I have no problem doing that, because it's so important to make sure that they understand you pass on this information. And I think, to be honest, I felt it might be better serving the community and
just having some very informative videos about...
Put it on a platform. And I realized WhatsApp is a very powerful tool, as we all know. WhatsApp has been a massive hindrance, but also a massive benefit, depending on what side of the coin you look at. You know, the spread of rumors like wildfire on WhatsApp has been a major issue, but also WhatsApp is the most effective form of communication, particularly with the Somali
community,
others, and also the men, because a lot of them don't have social media platforms, probably don't TV.
Don't really do Facebook. Like
Facebook, Zoom is a completely new concept for me, let alone my parents. So it's thinking about ways to get this information across. And I felt YouTube would be a good way to get the video uploaded, but spreading it on WhatsApp. And that's how the idea of the YouTube channel was born.
Great. So what's it called? What's your...
Well, it's still working on the name, but
cool.
To Sam's Health Chats for now.
Okay.
That's going to change, clearly. I'm not, again, I have my vices, but I'm not the most graphic or the most creative of people. So we live as we learn. I'm learning to edit as we speak. I'm learning to film as we speak. The whole thing is a learning process. So.
Great. So as soon as it's out, inshallah, you let us know. We'll let the group know as well, inshallah.
Oh yeah, you'll see me plastering it everywhere, which is not something characteristic of me, but I'll plaster it.
How can the community at large communicate with you? Do you have a preference in how they interact with you, or is it just...
No, I don't. I think my I don't know if it's a problem or a blessing. I'm too accessible. I don't mind how people access me. I think I'm available on several different platforms. And if it's anything I can help with, I'm happy to be contacted.
Fantastic. Dr. Samira, thank you this evening for your time. Really precious. I think the advice you've given is really it's really nice, very clear on what you've said as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to add, however,
go ahead.
I think vaccination is an issue, of course. I'm going to talk about it in my video, but I know a lot of parents have issues with regards to vaccinating their children, the nasal spray particularly, because of a main ingredient in there, which is porcine gelatin. And I think obviously that is a whole topic in its own, and we can answer the questions later, but there has been a lot of controversy about that. And I know it exists, but I will talk about it and mention it in my YouTube video.
Fantastic. We look forward to that and more, inshallah.
100%. Take care.
Dr. Samira, thank you for your time.
No problem. My pleasure. Salani.